MMD coming at you with tips for Super Golf on Roblox. Today I want to talk about winning in Super Golf. And winning is all about building a plan for each hole, right? And building a plan for each hole really comes down to three key things. One is understanding game physics, right? Understanding how the game works and how the ball's going to move is really key. Two is geometry, right? Understanding aspects of geometry. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And the last, and just as important, if not more important than any of those, is strategy. You have to have strategy when you're playing in order to win. If you're just out there to play, great. But if you want to win, strategy is key. Okay, so let's talk about game physics, right? When I'm talking about game physics, I'm really kind of talking about understanding how the ball's going to react to things like hills, walls, wedges, how speed is going to impact, what you're doing, and surface, right? Depending on the surface you're on, the ball is going to behave differently. So let's talk about hills, right? So here I am in Island. The key thing about hills is if you're going diagonally up a hill or diagonally down a hill, you have to understand that there's a physics model that's going to represent gravity. And what gravity does is it's going to pull you down the hill, right? So if I'm going up this hill and I'm aiming at that tree up there in front, right? I'm not going to go to where that tree is. You see how I curve there? Right? So depending on how fast you go, that curve is going to be, if it's slower, it's going to be more. If it's faster, it's going to be less. If the hill's steeper, it's going to be more, that type of thing. And the same thing downhill. When you're going downhill, it's going to curve. So it's real important to understand that. I see a lot of people, with a nice straight shot up a hill, slightly over to the side. And, I just know they're going to miss it because you're not accounting for the fact that that hill is going to pull that ball. So something to understand. Walls. In Roblox, walls don't act completely normal. When you hit a wall, you're going to come off the wall with a slight correction towards perpendicular. It's the reason why, and let's go up over here. I'm going to show you. It's the reason why if you go diagonally down a corridor like this, if I go that way, you would expect if I'm always going to go off the same angle that I came into the wall, I would get down to the end. But you notice here, I end up going back and forth between the walls. And that's because there's always a correction towards perpendicular on walls in Roblox. So it's a good thing to keep in mind when you're trying to figure out your shot. Know that you're not going to come off in the exact same angle. You're going to come off slightly corrected towards perpendicular. Right? It's a constant correction. So once you kind of understand it, you can kind of figure it out. Wedges. Another key thing about Super Golf is, as I see people having problems with, are wedges. No one really seems to understand how they're going to work. And the piece of information or the piece of advice I can give: when you see a wedge, you want to go off the wedge, think about that wedge as a wall that continues out both directions, because that's really what it is. A wedge is just a wall, right? It's just a diagonal wall, right? So when you imagine that wedge going this, if you don't know where it's going to come off, think, okay, well, if that was a wall and I hit that wall at that angle, it's going to go up the hill, right? And if I hit it further this way, it's going to go, the angle is just going to make it go further down if that wall was there, closer to the wall. So what that would do, in this instance, it's going to make it go up this hill, maybe closer to that sidewall. If I go here, it's going to come off that wall at a different angle, and it's going to put me back towards this. So watch. If I go here, boom, makes it straight, right? If I come in over here, let's see if I can, well, let's go down to the bottom here. If I come down here, it's going to be closer to that other side. You see? So you learn how to play the wedges, right? All right. And then what else? Speed. Speed's important, as we talked about with hills. Faster you go, the less corrections that's going to happen. But the other real important thing is speed impacts how your ball's going to react to things, right? So there are small imperfections in the ground, there's small imperfections in the walls. The faster you go, the more magnified those imperfections are going to be on how they react on your ball. So if there's something on the wall, you go in real fast. If you went slow, you might not even notice anything. But if you went really fast, your ball might jump up in the air or come even right back at you, right? So something to keep in mind, that speed can have different effects. And the last thing is surface, right? Ice, the ball's gonna go, is gonna have less friction, right? If it's grass, the ball's gonna, slow down faster, that thing. But even grass from one map to the next, the friction models are slightly different. So you have to learn how your surface affects your ball. And that's just practicing a bit, hitting the ball, 20 and seeing how far it goes, and one map hitting 20 in another map, seeing how far it goes, to kind of understand the differences. So it's game physics. Right? The next thing is geometry. I kind of touching on a little bit here, knowing that when you hit the ball at a certain angle, it's always at a certain speed, it's always going to go to the same spot. So here I am, boom, and here I am on that right here in this little center between all these blocks here. I come back, hit the same speed, the same space, and I'm going to end up in the same spot, right? It's just geometry. You come in at a certain speed, you're going to come off on a certain angle, okay? So that's important to understand. If you're trying to get to the same spot, right, to take your next shot, understand, hey, if I'm going to hit in the same spot, it's going to go there. But the key for geometry here that you have to understand is with slightly random spawns, if you're moved over a little bit at that beginning, if you hit your ball to the same spot on the wall that you did before, it's going to go to a different position because you are going to have a different angle into the wall. So the key element here, and this, by the way, is I think one of the things that separates me from a lot of the other players, is understanding this and knowing what to do about it, right? Is that you have to adjust so that you're coming in with the proper angle to get to where you want to go. And there's a trick. I'm going to cover that in a future video. So I'm not going to go into detail here about that, but it's something that if you think about, you might be able to come up on your own about how geometry works for this. And there's principles of geometry that will actually speak to you being able to get to that same spot. So maybe you do a little bit of research on that. That, by the way, is, I think, one of the key elements as to why I'm able to do well, where other people might have a little more trouble with just random spawns. And then strategy. This is real important. A lot of times there's a hole-in-one shot that people know about, they like it, but it's really risky, right? You go for that hole-in-one, but if you miss it, you're out of bounds, or you're somewhere where you can't make another shot to the hole. And where strategy really comes into play for building your plan is, hey, if I'm only hitting that shot 1 out of 10 times, but I know I can get 2 shots into that hole almost every time, the payoff is just massive, right? Everybody else succeeding 10% of the time, you getting a 2 nearly 100% of the time. You're making up a shot in almost everybody on that hole every time, right? Now, the way I've worked is, especially when new maps come out, I'll find this one strategy really difficult and I'll just settle on 2, right? But I'll go back and every so often keep working on it. And if I'm able to come up with, hey, I've got something that gets me there 1 out of every 3 times. Now that's kind of a good payoff, right? Okay. Every 3 times I'm going to get a hole-in-one and make even a bigger step, and then the other 2 times I might actually sacrifice a shot. It's still kind of, questionable what you're going to do there, but that's the kind of strategy I'm talking about, right? And also game strategy. When you're in a game, you're up by 5 strokes going into the last 3 holes. Why take a risk on a risky hole-in-one shot? Just, have backup strategies, right? I know I can get into this, especially when you're coming into a hole-in-one, like I said, that's difficult. Stay away from it. Go ahead and get your 2. Let the other guy take the risk to catch up to you. Strategy. And that type of thinking really helps in a lot of different areas. So those are some tips I'll give you about winning in Super Golf. And as I said, I'm going to come back with a future video, and I'm going to go into more detail about what I specifically do to account for random spawns. Like I said, I think is one of the key elements for me being able to perform really well in Super Golf. All right, I hope that was useful. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will be coming at you hopefully not nearly as long as it took me to do this video from the last one. All right, guys, have a good time. Talk at you later. Bye.